She was only a child no older than 10 when the Maximus pointed to her in the crowd and declared her the next Vestal Virgin. From that moment on, her life was no longer her own. She was chosen not for ambition, power, or brilliance, but for purity and obedience. And with that single decision, she was bound more intimately to Rome than any emperor or general would ever be. Why did the Roman state take young girls, barely old enough to speak in court, and imprison them in sacred silence? The selection of a Virgo Vestalis was solemn and chilling. The girl had to be between 6 and 10, both parents alive. No family disgrace. She must be physically. She had to look like the embodiment of Rome's imagined purity. And then, before the gods and the law, she would be chosen, sometimes by lottery, sometimes by the direct hand of the Pontifex Maximus himself. But make no mistake, this was no honor. Many families wept when their daughters were chosen, not with pride, but with dread, because to become a Vestal meant surrendering everything. Led away in silence, she crossed the Sacra Via for the final time as a citizen. She was now the property of the goddess Vesta and of the Roman state. Plutarch tells us that King Numa Pompilius established this order of virgins to guard the eternal flame, Rome's spiritual heartbeat. But this was more than religion. It was politics, propaganda, a performance of virtue, enforced with absolute control. Inside the Atrium Vesta, nestled behind the Temple of Vesta, she would live for 30 years. 10 years to learn, 10 years to serve, 10 years to train others. She could not marry, she could not touch or be touched by any man. She could not even hold her old name. She became a living symbol of discipline, virtue, and the moral foundation of Rome itself. But that symbol came at a price, because if she made a mistake just once, the punishment was not divine, it was Roman, and it was merciless. The vow of chastity was not just spiritual, it was national security. Her body was sacred. If she broke that vow, Rome didn't forgive. Rome buried her. The Vestal was watched constantly by elder priestesses, by guards, by the state. If she failed in her duties, even once, if the eternal flame went out, punishment was swift. She could be scourged in private, beaten with rods in silence, never seen suffering publicly, because her dignity mattered, but not her pain. Worse than the physical punishments was the fear, the psychological cage. She lived in isolation. Silence wasn't just expected, it was enforced. Even a rumor of contact with a man could summon a trial. But these were not trials as we know them. Vestal virgins, once accused, had little hope of defense. Rome presumed guilt. The most feared crime was called incestamere, the violation of her vow of chastity, and for that there was only one sentence: burial alive. No blood could be shed, not for Rome's sacred daughters, so the punishment had to be elegant. They called it a ritual. They called it justice. But it was slow execution in silence. In 216 BCE, 2 Vestals, Opimia and Floronia, were accused of breaking their vows. Floronia took her own life. Opimia was not given that option. Here's what happened. She was led through the forum, dressed in white, barefoot, veiled, like a bride on her wedding day, but she was walking to her death. The procession ended at the Campus Cellaretus, the field of the wicked. There, a chamber had been dug beneath the earth. Inside, a bed, bread, milk, and a lamp, the illusion of mercy. She descended the stairs. The tomb was sealed, and silence swallowed her whole. Rome did not call this murder. They said she was given a chance. But there was no escape, no rescue. The ritual did not allow for screams, not even a name. Her memory was buried with her body. No monument, No tombstone, just soil and silence. This was how Rome punished its purest daughters, with reverence and with cruelty. The story of the Vestal Virgins is not one of holiness, it's one of control, of empire, of women turned into symbols, then silenced when they failed to meet impossible standards. They were sacred, yes, but they were never safe. So the question remains, what does a civilization lose when it sacrifices humanity in the name of virtue? We admire Rome for its architecture, law, and empire. But maybe, just maybe, we should remember what they buried and why they buried it in silence. Comment below. Do you think the Vestals were on a door, imprisoned by power? And if purity demands punishment, what does that say about the society enforcing it? Subscribe for more forgotten truths from history's darkest vaults.